Okay, so when cleaning the floor, you just grab a hose and get the floor really wet. I picked up a Zet floor cleaner from the Home Depot, and this allowed me to be able to pull up some of the grease stains and a lot of the oil buildup that was built on the concrete. And basically you just take and you put the cleaner down and a scrub brush hooked to a pole and scrub all the oily spots, dirty spots, anything that's got a lot of buildup. You want to get that all cleaned off.
Alright guys, so I've been scrubbing the floor with a brush and concrete floor cleaner, and although it might be fairly good on the kind of oily residue that's on top of the concrete, it doesn't really get the stains too well or like large buildup. I would definitely recommend spending most of your time with the pressure washer. I've got a pressure washer with this turbo nozzle on it.
So I scrubbed everything really good with the brush, and then I took the pressure washer and sprayed out all the buildup that was built anywhere on the concrete, and also pushed all the cleaner out of the garage as well. Alright guys, step number 2. So in this step, we're going to be covering the tips on etching the floor to get it ready for the epoxy. Alright, to etch the floor, what I did is I got a weed killer spray bucket and mixed up the solution inside the bucket and sprayed it on the floor and scrubbed it in really good.
Okay, so now I've got the the first coat of the acid etching done, and you just want to rinse it off. I have my driveway already wet with water, so I can just kind of rinse this diluted acid solution in the driveway.
The idea behind this is to give it a little bit of a rough surface, and they tell me to test it. You put a little bit of water down on the concrete there, and if it absorbs into the concrete real good or fast, then the adhesion of the paint is going to be good. But if the water kind of stays on top of the concrete and bubbles up, then that's what your paint's going to do, and the paint's not going to soak into the concrete.
Alright, so now I'm using the acid that comes in the epoxy coat kit. And I'm just mixing it, following the directions that they gave me. It takes about 5 quarts of water per full kit packet. And so you just mix the two together and make sure you got some rubber gloves and rubber boots and safety glasses. And I like this little dust collector, respirator, whatever you want to call it, so you don't breathe in as much fumes. And they say to just kind of wet down the area before you spray the acid or apply the acid etching to the area. And I've done it both ways. I've sprayed it lightly with water, and then I've done it in areas where I've just sprayed the solution directly to it. It seems to be about the same, but you seem to go through a little bit more of the product if you don't put a little bit of water down first. So I guess if you got extra product, you're probably okay to not wet it down first. You just got to make sure you rinse it really good and get any residue out before you start applying epoxy. And then what I do is just take a little bit of water, kind of sprinkle it lightly. Just take the solution, spray it in the area, and scrub the area really good. So I just work an area about like that, and then I just spray another area and just repeat until you get all the way through the floor. Triple rinse it. Get any loose dust particles and any of the solution out. Alright guys, so I've pressure washed this floor twice. I've cleaned it once with a degreaser, and I've also etched it twice with some type of acid. So I feel like, short of renting a diamond grinder, I've done everything I can to clean and prep this floor as best I could. Each night, total of 4 nights now cleaning and prepping the floor.
And then every night, one thing I've done is I've turned this fan on just to kind of dry things out. I've also left, that window open there to, bring in some fresh air and let that fan circulate it out and dry out the air a little bit. Because one thing you want is you want the floor pretty dry or completely dry when you go to epoxy it. So, I've washed it every night this week, and then Friday, tomorrow, I'm not going to wash it at all. So all day tomorrow and then into Saturday, it's going to have time to dry. So it'll have well over 24 hours since I've last got it wet before I put the epoxy down.
All right, guys, so now we're on to step number 3. In this step, we'll be covering the products I used to fill the cracks and also fill some of the holes in the concrete.
All right, guys, I've got the concrete all prepared with the acid etching and cleaned it. Now I'm going to go through and caulk up all these joint seams here, just to kind of prevent dirt and bugs and stuff from coming up in there. And also, I think it's going to look a little bit better with the caulk in there. This is specifically designed for concrete. So I'm going to go along all the edges and these joints here. And then also there's a couple holes and a couple of cracks that I'm just going to fill with this ready mix patch and let all that cure overnight, and then get ready to do the epoxy tomorrow. Just push it into the crack fairly thick. You don't need to smooth it out with your finger necessarily. Just put it in there pretty thick, kind of in excess of the crack there. Alright guys, so I've gone through and used a self-leveling caulk in the main cracks. And then along there I used a little bit more of a thicker caulk that doesn't self-level. Seemed to work a little bit better on the stairs there and around all the bottom of the walls there. And I do think that it looks a little bit better than just having a basic crack there. Plus I think it's going to keep the ant stand a little bit possibly, and just give an overall little bit better finished look.
All right, guys, step number 4. So in this step, we're going to be covering the process of actually applying the epoxy down and spreading it out. We're going to be covering the mixing to get the epoxy properly mixed, and we're also going to be covering the decorative chips.
Okay, Keaton's my helper today. He's got the air blower. He's blowing out all the dust from the corners and along all the areas. You can't have any dust on the concrete floor because your epoxy paint won't adhere to the concrete very well if there's dust on it. So grab you a helper, maybe a leaf blower and or compressed air like Keaton's got there, and go ahead and blow the dust off there, Keaton. Good. Keep doing it, dude. Get all that dust out of here. Alright guys, so I'm right in the middle of epoxying this floor. I've got this section done so far. So you apply the epoxy down, you smooth it out, and then you put the flake into it if you want. So at this point, I'm just rolling out the epoxy over here, and then on the stairs there, I pretty much did most of that with a brush. You just kind of put the epoxy on real heavy and use your brush and smooth it out. Now the epoxy is kind of self-leveling, so it if it's not real smooth at first, it starts to smooth itself out. But one thing that happens is if you start to get these little bubbles, these little fish eyes they call them there. So after about 10 minutes, you'll see those bubbles in there, and you got to go through and roll over it again to get those fish eyes out of the epoxy. And once you put on the flake, you can't really go and roll over it again. So my suggestion is wait to put that flake on as long as you can. When you're doing this epoxy, you only mix the amount that you're going to be covering. You don't mix the part A and the part B for the entire floor, just the actual section that you're working in. You mix that little section, and then you pour that onto the concrete, and then you smooth it out, and then you mix another section. So depending on your desired thickness, will depend on how far you spread that amount out. Now in the epoxy coat kit, it has you mix a specific amount for each section. And so if you want to spread that over like a 10 by 10 section, it's going to be thinner than spreading it out, let's say, a 10 by 5. So what I've personally been trying to do to get the desired thickness of the epoxy that I'm looking for is the amount that they tell you to mix as a little pre-mixed stick. What I do is I factor about 60 square feet per amount that they have you mix, and that seems to get the desired thickness that I'm looking for. So you can tell right there, I've already got the flake down and I've got a little fisheye. So what I've been doing is I've just been taking my brush and just kind of dabbing it a little bit. Put a little epoxy in there and it seems to smooth back out. So if you see those, go ahead and take your brush and kind of dab and pop the bubble. Alright, so as far as mixing this stuff up, you've got the little stick that comes in the kit. Now the kit tells you to put the hardener up to this line here. You just put it in the bucket until it fills up to that line, and then you put in the actual color, the part A, up to that line. So basically you just take the part B first, and you pour that in there until you're at the line, and it's best to do this on a level surface. Now of course, if you're not using this brand, you want to use the instructions that come with the brand that you're using. And then you just take the part A, which is a taupe color, and you fill it up to the second line. And this amount of mix, for me, I'm covering it about 60 square feet to get the desired thickness that I'm. So it comes with a drill attachment in the kit. And you want to mix this up really good. It says to mix it for about 3 minutes. Alright, so now what you do is you take the mix and you just pour it onto the concrete. Now, since I've got to go fairly high up the wall over here, I pour a fair amount by the wall so that I can work it up the wall there. So I'll put, fairly good amount there, and then you just kind of pour it along the concrete. So what you do is you just take this squeegee, and I first kind of squeeze it. I just kind of pull the squeegee and pull some of the product up along the side of the wall here first. And you just take your squeegee and just kind of, just like you're rolling it.
Alright, so you basically just take the squeegee and push the product out over the desired working area that you want to go with. In my case, for the desired thickness that I was trying to get the product to spread across was basically about 60 square feet, covering it evenly over that particular area. I went over it a couple times in each direction just to try to get the epoxy coat covered fairly smoothly.
Now once you've got the product just kind of smoothed out a little bit,
I take and just kind of run it up along the wall, and I put kind of some extra product right by the wall so I can use my brush to get it up there.
All right, now, so what I'm doing is just taking all the epoxy and brushing it along the walls where the roller is not going to reach.
And I just take the squeegee, just kind of squeegee the product out again one more time to kind of smooth it out, maybe extend how far that it goes. Then what you do is you take your roller and you're basically just smoothing it out at this point.
So you just keep smoothing out the product evenly over the working area. Now, I go one direction with the roller, and then I go the opposite direction just to get a real good, smooth, even coverage of the epoxy coat. And I'll go over it a couple times.
In this crack area, I just recommend using the brush to brush the epoxy into the crack and smoothing it out. And then the other area I recommend, once you get it all rolled and smoothed out, is just take your brush along this area and remove some of that excess thickness that's there and just kind of smooth that out.
So at this point, you basically just wait about 10 minutes and then you smooth over it again, and you just kind of keep an eye out for those fish eyes and smooth those out as needed as well with the roller or brush or whatever. But you give that about 10 minutes, and then you while you're mixing your next section up, you can mix that up and then roll over it one more time. My roller's getting pretty dang hard, so I'm actually going to change it to a new one, which will absorb some of the epoxy up, and I'll lose some more epoxy, but it's getting pretty hard. It's not smoothing it out very well.
All right, so now I'm at the point where this is smoothed out enough. I've gone through and removed all the air bubbles in this section here. As I work along, and you get through another section, you want to go ahead and add the decorative chips, which help with making the floor a little bit less slippery, a little bit of slip resistance in these chips. So to get them evenly, what you need to do is you actually chuck them up fairly high, above 5 feet, 5-6 feet, and just kind of let them dissipate. Rather than chuck them down at the floor, you want to throw them up in the air. You can even bounce them up off the ceiling, and it dissipates them, really evenly. So you just kind of throw them up real high, and then you get a good even texture instead of kind of throwing them in spots. That kind of makes it a little bit blotchy.
All right, so you can see I've got this paper and tape down here so I can get a good sharp edge with the epoxy.
A few things that I'm glad that I had were a bucket of water and plenty of extra rags. I've got painter's rags over here, and obviously these tarps here outside the garage were a must. So a couple things I would definitely suggest are water, rags, and a couple tarps. All right, so you can see that's the first section I did there, and then this is the second section, and then I went ahead and did this section here. Now over here I haven't gotten to the chips yet. So if you're wanting to look without the chips, that's kind of what it's going to look like. This has been smoothed back out a couple times. This section over here is still kind of curing. I'll go through and actually run the roller on that one more time to just smooth it out. All right, guys, so I'm not sure how well you guys can see the texture or the flake. But something that I found out is it works really, really good to bounce it up off of something like the ceiling, or like on this last section here, I bounced pretty much the entire section up off of the garage door. Where areas that I didn't do that, it's a lot more blotchy, and like there's that one spot right there that's really heavy flake, and there's not really a whole lot you can do about it once you have it on there, other than, you know, epoxy over it and do it again. Throw them at the wall, or you throw them at the ceiling. It really made a difference in an even coverage of the flakes. Another suggestion would be, you know, start in an area that I'm not as concerned about people seeing until you get a hang of how to get the correct amount of texture down.
All right, guys, so we're in step number 5. Step number 5, we're going to be covering the tips in applying the clear coat and also the aluminum oxide anti-slip.
All right, guys, so I've got the coat of epoxy applied. It's dried. It's real smooth. I think it actually turned out really good. I'm just getting ready to put the clear coat on there. They say to apply the clear coat within 10 to 24 hours. If you go over 24 hours, I guess you have to go through and sand it. So you want to make sure you get that applied in the first, 10 to 24 hours. The other thing I've done is I've applied a new barrier of tape there for the clear coat. So I pulled the first bit of tape off within the first couple hours, so that it, came off easily, and I didn't let it cure overnight and try to pull the tape off after, because then it'd be real hard to get the tape off. It's pretty clear and it's smooth. Even if you didn't put a clear coat down, I think you'd be okay. In this case, I'm going to add another coat of clear to it. I'm going to start on the stairs, and it comes with, in the epoxy coat kit, it comes with this aluminum oxide non-skid stuff that you just throw on the stairs there, or any area that you think might get slippery when wet. All right, so I've got the clear coat all mixed up, and I'm just going to pour it along the area.
Alright guys, so as far as the clear coat, I spread the product a little bit further because I've already got a pretty thick coat of the base down. I went a little bit thinner on top just to give it a little bit more depth and a little bit more gloss to the floor. I decided to add the clear coat, and you basically just apply it in the same way, put it on the squeegee, smooth everything out, and then grab your roller and go through and roll the whole thing just like you do the base coat.